Welcome back to part 2 of the interview with Louie La Vella, entertainment and celebrity branding expert. In today's episode, he's going to talk about the strategies that celebrities and top performers use in building their brand and what they do in order to execute at the highest level.
Welcome to this edition of Peak Performance Podcast with your host, Thor Conklin. Thor will be sharing the necessary tools, strategies, and psychology you'll need to become a peak performer in any area of your life or business.
Thor Conklin here. We give you the tricks, the tips, the tools, the strategy, the technology, and the psychology peak performers use in order to get more done and execute at the highest level. If you know what to do but struggle with getting it all done, or simply want to raise your game to the next level, this podcast is for you. Sit back and enjoy. Tell us about some of the performers you work with. You can leave out the names to protect the guilty or the innocent. But what are some of the strategies that you see that they're implementing along with your help in order to expand their brand?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's some of the brands I do work with, and even some of the ones that I am close to that watch from an outsider point of view, but learn from. I again, since in the beginning of our conversation was knowing your brand, your audience, they really know what their audience wants. So even like a festival that I'm working with, we know, for example, one particular festival, I wanted to build their social media brand as a community, and we're one of them. We weren't going to be the big corporate festival, the electronic music festival, and we're like a Live Nation or a Ticketmaster, and we're going to be the sort of mom and pop, even though we got 30,000 people, so it's not really mom and pop. But we're going to have that mentality of we're one of you. We're one of you, making it for you, right? So we had to make sure we knew what our audience liked. So I did a lot of research on, who are the people that are following us? What else do they like? How do they talk? What's their lingo? That kind of idea. So all the celebrities and music brands that I work with and watch even from an outsider point of view, you see similarities on them really connecting with their audience the way that their audience wants to be connected with. They don't pretend to be above and beyond everybody else all the time. They really want to connect on a normal level, and they engage. They hustle a lot. It feels great when somebody huge likes your tweet. Just pressing that heart button, and if you, oh my God, and you might share it and look at this person liked my tweet. Oh my gosh, they read what I had to say. We can do that on social media. And I see so many other brands forgetting the two-way engagement on social media. They still remember the old school way of push out advertising or push out media, putting something on TV or print or radio. And I really can't get any feedback from you. I'm just pushing out. Where social media is, the opposite. It's very big on two-way engagement. And the ones that do it really well are constantly hustling and doing that two-way engagement, because you build a super fan when somebody, you just like somebody's tweet or you comment back. They think, oh my God, I can't believe I had the opportunity to talk with the festival or this major brand or this massive celebrity. It really builds a fan base.
And do you find that the majority of the super popular musicians are doing it themselves, or do they have a team behind it doing it?
I think a little bit of both. I know a lot of them do a lot of their own social media because they like engaging with their fans. That's probably a reason why they are a celebrity. It was always in them to be famous and loved by as many people as possible. It's just part of being in you to be a celebrity. It's part of the drive. And then sometimes it gets so busy, you do have to sleep and you're actually at the concert performing, so you cannot be responding, but you might have a team member responding. And then there's two ways to go about that. You could have somebody respond and then have a little kind of initials that it's actually the team member responding, so it's real. And people understand it's not that person. Or you just might have them respond in the same brand voice that you would anyways. And you might be responding to an assistant, but you would never know that anyways. There's two ways to go about that, two different theories. It really depends on what works for you.
And what sort of, everyone that makes it to the top of their field, especially in entertainment and music, they know how to execute. What are you seeing? How are they becoming masters of execution?
I think they're very quick to learn. And change to the new ways of doing business and change to what's happening in the world. So if I'm thinking marketing and branding wise, again, social media comes into play, new platforms come into play. They seem to be very quick, off their feet learners, and they can get it. They're in there, they're playing with it, they're engaging properly, and they're very quick to learn what's new. They don't just stick to the old school way. I find that people who do that old school way, and that's even us as entrepreneurs, if we get stuck in old school ways of doing things, like I mentioned with the emails, you eventually will hit a cliff and fall off that cliff. So you need to know that you're building your wings and all this stuff. So when that cliff happens, you can glide to the next cliff and continue on there, so to speak. And I think celebrities and people that are high level that work with them, that are the brand managers and the superstar agents, they're similar because it's a very, very high impact, shark infested waters of an industry, right? It really is. It's meant to crush you, kick you out, chew you up. You know what I mean? Put roadblocks everywhere. It's meant for that. So only the top of the top get through and make the millions. And it's a fun industry, but I can see the elite really being quick to learn and executing quickly.
Now, being an insider, was there anyone that you've met during your journey that you're just like, wow, that's not really their public persona. They're really a nice or an interesting person or super smart. Is there someone that you've worked with that, we as a public don't see that side of them?
I mean, I interviewed Lady Gaga when she just got signed to Interscope. Now, I don't work with her. I'm not her brand manager, but she was such a nice person. And now she created a persona as the months and years went on that people think, wow, what a wacko sometimes, or she's very eccentric and that kind of stuff. And that's her character, but a super nice, down-to-earth girl. I mean, the funny story was I was in Miami doing interviews with some very famous DJs and musicians. I did national television, so it was a music TV show, like an MTV. And we were at this private penthouse suite. So it was like 100 of us, like very, celebrities were there and some media. And, I had all these lined up. And then this manager comes to me saying, I have this new girl, right? And she just got signed to Interscope like 2 weeks ago. And she's going to explode over the summer. She's going to perform today too. But do you guys have any opportunity to give her an interview? She'd love as much exposure as possible, obviously, right? And of course, we're thinking, when we don't have time, we have all this stuff lined up, and she's sort of an up-and-comer, but, we have these celebrities we have to interview. But I said, I'm always one to want to help up and comers and things like that. Of course, she didn't really need my help, but at the time, a no name. And I listened to the song on the manager's iPod, and it was Just Dance. And I'm thinking, this is probably going to be massive, and they're going to put a lot of money behind this anyways. Well, let's be helpful. Let's give her the interview. So I cut one of my other interviews out, sat down with Lady Gaga, and gave her first national TV interview. And a super nice, sweet, smart person, like extremely smart in the business, has been doing it obviously from years before, just locally in New York, and now ready to explode. But she had that drive and just a brilliant musician. And so that was a fun story. But somebody, like you mentioned, having a very odd persona to the public. But when you kind of talk to her, she's very down to earth.
Yeah, that's a great example. Tell us some advice that you received along the way that was absolutely spectacular.
I think the consistency thing is something I keep hearing, and it's not even like magical advice. I think everybody kind of knows it, but it's good to remind. I noticed that even with my clients, the give up factor is there so often. Even when I used to work with more nightclubs, and now I do a lot less of them and more festivals and musicians and stuff. But, they would put together a new night, whatever it's going to be, Wednesday night, student night. And they would give it like 3 to 4 weeks, and it might not grow fast enough, and they'd give up. They start something else, and they would give up. And then a year later, they're calling me saying, nothing's working, Louie. But they've gone through 12 different events, right? It's similar to people who are trying to drive and grow their business as an entrepreneur, or even musicians. I put out a song and I put it on Facebook, and my mom shares it, and I get no traction. There's no strategy, but they have no consistency. They don't have an actual long-term goal that if you chip away at it, all of a sudden you find out a year later goes by and you thought, wow, I'm actually either at the goal, past the goal, or just before the goal because of all the little things you've done throughout this time frame. I think people give up very quickly, especially because of that shiny object syndrome and focus problems and whatnot. But consistency, and especially talks to me because focus, I think that's been a big thing for myself. So I'd set a goal and think, okay, maybe things aren't going to move today or tomorrow, but a week from now something happens, and then 2 weeks from now, and all of a sudden I'm finding, oh my gosh, I've hit this goal. Took me a year to get here, but a year ago, I was nowhere compared to where I wanted to be now, for example, and I had to keep chipping away and not give up. I find that happen over and over again.
It reminds me of the hockey stick, how things work. It's like nothing, 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 nothing. And all of a sudden, it just takes off and it just goes vertical. And it's funny, I'm just making some notes. I'm like, I'm going to get a framed picture of a hockey stick or a small hockey stick that I can put here in my office. Because
yeah, it's great.
It's a great reminder. And it does. Everything works that way. It's just, in the beginning, it just takes time. And then it's almost as if all the momentum, all the pent up demand just takes off at once. So
it does. And even a personal story for my own personal brand. I thought I want to do speaking gigs. Never really did those before. I want to get on podcasts. Never really been on podcasts before. And I want to get in articles. So my end of 2015, my 2016 resolution was year of authority. I'm going to build as much more authority as possible in this year so that I can level up again. And, it was all about hustle, putting out the right content, creating a plan. So I didn't have to worry about getting 50 speaking gigs and a million podcasts within a month. I thought, it's a whole year. So everything's going to go towards that goal. And, now I've had several speaking gigs this year, but next, in 2017, as we're probably listening to this now, in March, I have so many, I'm actually running out of space in my time in the entire month for speaking gigs. And in 2016, I started my podcasting run at the end of July, August, and I went on 65 podcasts as an expert. Just by hustling and getting my message out there and having an assistant help me. And so that's great authority. Then getting featured in Inc. and being a Huffington Post and business.com contributor. And just all of a sudden, now I look back going, wow, I've built up some cool authority. But it took me a whole year and a bit to get here. But it's just consistency to keep going after that one goal.
Yeah, those first people that you end up calling and say, hey, do you need a speaker? Nope.
Yeah. Who the hell are you? But it snowballs, and it's like that boulder up the hill thing, right? So
yeah.
It's not like magical advice to be consistent, but it's again a great story to tell because it's something that people always need to have in their mind.
Yeah, something that I talk about a lot too is that the consistency is about obviously doing the same thing over and over again every single day. And so many, the reason they don't have that consistency is because they rely on motivation. And that is not a good drug to use to keep you consistent. You've got to be pulled by your ultimate vision, that North Star, that thing that is driving your life or your business vision. That will keep you consistent, not, let's do this thing. I feel good today, because one day you wake up and you don't feel good. But when it's your vision, you just do it anyway.
Mm-hmm. And that's, again, like we said, the doing what you love idea. So when you have that goal, if you get there, you're going to obviously be extremely happy, but at least through the journey you could be happy.
Yeah.
Sometimes motivation's money, and as entrepreneurs we lose money on the journey, so it can't be money. We know when we get there we might have lots of money, but that can't be the driving factor, like you said, right?
Yeah. It's funny, I was with someone yesterday and she was having trouble making all of her sales calls. And I'm like, what do you do? And she teaches kids musical instruments. And I said, by you not making those sales calls, how many kids do you think are going to go through life never learning a musical instrument, and how different their life is going to be and how much more shallow it's going to be? She's like, she looks at me, she goes, well, I never really thought of it that way. I said, you have an obligation, you have a duty to yourself and others to get your message out there as much as possible. She goes, wow, I guess I do have a duty. That changes the game. When you're doing it just for yourself, that's one thing. But when you think about the little kid that's never going to learn, the beauty of learning how to play a musical instrument. Now, you're taking that from that child.
Yeah, and that's absolutely brilliant, and it's reframing her mindset. And everybody needs to always, if they're not there yet, or constantly tweak your mindset. But you're reframing your mindset. It's that know your why, and then you're right. You're not motivated by weird factors that could go up and down. Yeah. The yeses and the nos in the call can't be a motivating factor. Money can't be. If you know your why, and like for her is a great example and a great story. Thor, her why is she wants to teach these kids and give them the gift of music and a smile on their face. And then the motivation becomes very different, but also you can have so much fun on the journey now.
Yeah. Picture a kid with a clarinet in their hand going to Yale and getting their law degree. Now yank it out of their hand and then, make them homeless and,
Yeah, right. So you'll get on that phone.
That's right. Little pressure there. So what about some of the worst advice you've ever received in business? You didn't know it at the time. You took it, and then you said, uh-oh, not a good idea.
I see a lot of advice given from people who are not experts and perceived to be experts. I'm trying to think of advice I have personally received that could give you a nice story on I went down the wrong paths. I mean, I'm always going down wrong paths just for my own, testing things out. But specific advice, I mean, I hate to bash on schools and stuff like that, but I even see, family members and other people who are taking advice from, the guidance counselors, things like that. Go down this path. This is where it's going to end up, and it just doesn't work out anymore. And even to to this day, even in my area, I live up in the Toronto area in Canada, and still, there's a lot of teaching jobs. You should go to school to be a teacher to young people. And they're getting out of teachers college with their teaching degree, and there's no jobs.
Right.
And people, other family members or not are like, yeah, I've had my degree for years and I can't get a job. So there's a lot of ill advice going out there without knowing, let's say, the current aspect of the world or condition of the world. And I think that's advice that people need to be very careful giving advice. So, and again, I see this in social media forums, things like that. Somebody will ask a question, and somebody who thinks they're an expert or just wants to pretend they're an expert so they can get a client will give some advice that's wrong. This is how you should be targeting, or if you use these automation tools, people are going to love it. And that may not be good for your audience. I bash on automation a lot, and I use automation, but I bash on it so that people can get the right framework on how to use automation. Some audiences hate that. Other audiences love it. You really have to know your audience. So it's really difficult when you see that happen. Again, guidance counselors and go to school, get your job, and then there's nothing there. Or here's my fake social media advice, and there's nothing to it. I see that happen a lot. But personally, advice wise, I try and block out a lot of that stuff. So now I can't come up with anything. Maybe that's good.
That is good.
I'm sure I've had a lot of crappy advice. So.
Yes, we all have, and I've taken a bunch of it, not knowing it over the years. We know a lot about the successes and where you've actually killed it. Tell us about an epic failure and what did you learn from it?
All right, so let's choose one out of the millions, right?
Yeah.
So here's a fun story. One of the nightclubs I was working with, this was years back, we had a big concert I was producing, but they were going to be the venue. So we kind of had a 50-50 of what we were going to do. So they were going to worry about staging, fencing, security. They're the venue. The back line, which is the instruments, drum machine, DJ equipment, guitars, blah, blah, blah. My job was work with the agency, book them, pay for the artist, promote it all, sell the tickets. Great. Good combo, right? So this was happening on a holiday day, like a July 4th concept. And day comes, everything's rolling nicely. We have thousands and thousands of tickets sold. And the manager comes in for sound check and says, "Where's the drum kit?" And I'm thinking, oh, drum kit. I looked through the tech writer, and yes, there had to be a drum kit there. So I go to the owner of the venue and said, "Hey, this was your half of the responsibilities. Where's the drum kit?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm too busy. I'm worrying about trying to stuff beer in the fridges, yada, yada, yada. It's your show. It's your problem." I'm like, no, wait a second. This is your end of the bargain. Like all the backline stuff, like where am I going to get a drum kit? It's a holiday. No rentals are open right now, right? And he basically said, "Look, it's your problem." The manager looked at me and said, "No drum kit, no show." And I'm like, "Nah, don't worry about it. I'll get a drum kit." And I'm thinking, where am I going to get a drum kit at this time? So of course, nobody's answering their phones. It's a holiday. There's no rental places open, any of that stuff. This is going to go down in history as the worst concert ever because it's not going to happen. I'm going to get lynch mob. But, you don't panic. You figure it out. And I started talking to any connections I had. Went to Facebook. Who are musicians? I need you guys to private message me. Hey, Doorman, 1, 2, and 3. Are you guys in bands? Do you know anybody who's in bands? And I eventually found some people that had been in bands and have drum kits available. I had to decide which of the 3 was the right drum kit that we needed because you just can't have some crappy drum kit on a concert. And I found that drum kit and put it up. But an almost epic failure happened in front of my eyes. Didn't panicked a little bit, but enough to give me motivation, but got it done. But the big lesson was always have your checks and balances. I had thought and assumed that this other half of the scenario and the project was getting done. And since it always was going to land on my brand and my shoulders, because I was the producer of the show, I should have been on top of everything and always had the checklist being checked off constantly. I sort of left that side of the story to the venue owner. And what a big mistake that was. And almost could have been a huge disaster.
It's interesting. And sometimes what you find, too, is that your partner on the other side doesn't have the same sort of integrity or standards that you do. Not only not bringing up the drum kit, but I made the mistakes early on where I would thought that someone would do the right thing. Boy, was I wrong in some situations.
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, like they may not have the right morals as you.
Yes.
They may not have the right motivation or oomph in the project as you do. To him, it was just another show. Whatever. I'm going to sell my beer. It's your disaster. You know what I mean?
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, a lot of times, they say that you're the only one with 100% investment not just money-wise, let's say, but mind-wise in your projects. And other people may have 90, may have 75, and that still may be good enough, but you always have to realize that you are the only one with 100% motivation in that project or that success or whatever it is you're up to. Somebody might be 99. More than likely, you're the only one with 100%, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Going back and looking backwards, you've gotten a lot of experience, a lot of situations that you now know, you know what, maybe I would have done something a little bit differently had I known what I know now. If you were able to turn back time, what would you look at and how would you do something differently?
Yeah, I think, mentioning the focus thing would have made me grow quicker. Not that that I haven't grown in a nice pace, but I think absolutely making sure my focus was always something I kept an eye on. I think only in the last few years I've really started to, like I mentioned, say no, don't take on projects that are awesome, interested in, maybe even fits in entertainment, but just another project. I think that's one thing that I would have made sure right from the start. Here's my goal. We're going to get there. Maybe not as quick as possible, but as best as possible. And I would have made sure that was in play. And the second one, hiring assistants or working with people so it's not always the one-man show. I think that's one thing that, again, recently I've started to bring on assistants to do tasks that I don't need to do. Like I mentioned just right before this, I'm the only one who's 100% in whatever I'm up to. Even if I have a designer, they may only give back something that's 80% that I think I would do. But that's okay. 80%, maybe still 100 to the client, right? And instead of taking on everything, outsourcing or hiring staff members or bringing on assistants that can do tasks that you can teach them to do like you or close to it, and have them do some of the work so that I can A, give my brain a break, and B, actually expand into other areas. So I have time to do other things like podcasts now, instead of having to be on my phone making social media designs for clients, which takes me no time at all, but it takes time. So I think between those two, I would have made sure I've implemented those very early on so I didn't have to figure them out on the way.
Great advice. Thank you so much for listening today. I really do appreciate your time, and I hope you found today's show valuable. If you would like to receive these shows automatically to your phone or to your computer, simply go to iTunes and subscribe. After listening to several of the shows, if you're so inclined, please leave us a 5-star rating, as this helps us reach additional people and spread the message. If you're truly committed to taking your life to the next level and doing whatever it takes to become a peak performer, but something's holding you back, something is blocking your way, and you just can't seem to figure out what it is, send me an email to info@thorconklin.com, and I'd be more than happy to get on the phone with you. We'll schedule a 15-minute discovery call. No obligation, no cost. I absolutely love to hear from the listeners, and if there's something I can do to help, I'd be more than happy to do that. Also, if you found something of great interest in today's show and you want to share that with your friends and family, simply go to my Facebook page, Thor Conklin, click on the episode, hit the share button, and share it on your page. You can follow me at Twitter at Thor Conklin. The website is thorconklin.com. We're constantly adding new free resources, discussing additional tricks, tips, tools, and strategies on how to be a peak performer. Remember, I try to keep these episodes short so you can listen to them during dot time, doing other things, commuting, driving, walking, working out. Decide to be a peak performer in all that you do. And until tomorrow, have an absolutely amazing day. That concludes part 2 of our interview with Louie La Vella. Please stay tuned later this week for part 3.